All right, we are in the book of Ephesians, which is it's an interesting book, I think, in Paul's canon because it's sort of not it's in the in-between space in my head because there's like the great treatises of theology that Paul writes in Romans and First Corinthians and First Thessalonians to a little lesser extent. And then there's these little books, these little letters like Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians that are all like 4 or 5
Right.
chapters long.
Right.
And we have like our greatest hits we pull out of them, but I don't know that how often we actually read them all the way through, even though they're not that long.
Right. Right. I can promise you I haven't. So if you needed confirmation on that, yep, here we are. I have
Well,
not read it all the way.
I'm not sure I ever have. I'm not like it's not one of those books that we like pull open and we're like, let's
Right.
because we're much more likely to go to Romans if we want to like sit down
Right.
with Paul, right? So I think it's important for us to recognize that this is one of those books that we're less familiar with.
Yep. Yep.
So what do you know about Ephesians?
Very little to nothing. Um, I know how to pronounce it. I know how to
Yeah.
spell. I know it is a letter of Paul's,
Yeah.
and that might be it.
So Ephesians is one of Paul's letters that he wrote while he was in prison. So the last part of his life.
Oh, I did know that part. I knew he was in
Okay.
prison. That's my other fun fact. Now I'm done.
Yeah. So he was in prison the last part of his life, for the last
Yeah.
2 years of his life. So he wrote letters while he was in prison, which means fellow Christians were allowed to come and see him. It was more like house arrest is better than prison, I guess is a probably a better way to put it. So he wasn't in like a jail. He was just
Right.
in prison to his house. So fellow believers would come and like bring him food and stuff, but they would also bring in like correspondence and things. So he would still be in communication with the churches that he was resourcing throughout Asia and the Mediterranean. So this is one of the prison letters to a town called Ephesus, which is in Asia Minor, what we would like Turkey.
Right.
There. Though we've learned in the World Cup that they don't call it Turkey. It's not supposed to be called Turkey anymore.
Really? I missed
In the World
that.
Cup, they've been calling it Turkey.
Oh,
Maybe that's how they say it in Turkish. I don't know. But yeah,
well, that's good to know. Okay.
because
All
somebody
right.
asked me what one of my kids was like, where's Turkey? And I was like, I think that's Turkey.
Right. Okay, then. Good to know. All right.
Lord,
All right.
this the new things the World Cup brings us.
I mean,
Also, the Czech Republic's not called the Czech Republic anymore.
I knew that
Did you
part.
know that?
I knew that one. Well, funny enough, I have a set of china from my great grandmother that says Czechoslovakia on the back of it. And it's like, well, it
Oh,
hadn't been that
nice.
for a long time. So there we go.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I
that's
swear.
funny. I had a church
Ah,
member who was born in the Austria-Hungarian Empire
oh,
in
wow.
Hungary, in what is now Hungary.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he was born, he was like, it was like 1919 or something like that. It was like right at the end of the war. So it was
Yeah. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
like in that sweet spot. And I was like,
Interesting.
yeah,
Huh.
and that part of the world has seen a lot of change. Um,
Right.
so anyway, he's in prison. These are the most pastoral of his letters. So like Romans was to the church in Rome, but it's a very much theological like it's very much theology, like
Right.
instructions,
Right.
very heavy book,
Mhm.
very dense book. The
Right.
prison letters are much more pastoral. They're like practical advice to people in um, a specific location and in a particular time and place. I always think that's helpful to remember that Paul's letters were not, most of them, except for Romans, were written to a specific place and time. And so they weren't meant for
Right.
like universal application.
Right.
They're more
I
like
think that
advice.
is important. Right. That
Yeah.
is important because context matters, right? We've talked about that a lot. So yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. And like if you know you're reading somebody else's email,
Right.
it's a different thing than if you're reading like a textbook that somebody sat down and wrote for you um to like learn about a subject. Like this
Right.
is a one-sided conversation. Like we're reading one person's email inbox
Yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
which is a whole
Yeah.
different situation because you're only getting half of the story. So you got to have to
Right.
imagine what's the situation that's actually happening in
Right.
Ephesus to prompt this reaction. So
Right. 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 Okay.
um so that's where we are. Ephesians 4 is right in the middle. And Ephesus was a trading town. It was a crossroads of trade. So it was very big, a large city with a lot of people moving in and out of it. So
Okay.
um, that is important context because the question that seems to be presented to us is how do we deal with people of different
Mm,
faith backgrounds who are coming into the church and folks who are not in the church at all? Like, what do I do about that? So
right.
that's
Huh.
sort of where we are coming into this passage. So we're going to start with verse 17. You want to read through
Okay.
let's read through 24.
All righty. So I'm telling you this, and I insist on it in the Lord. You shouldn't live your life like the Gentiles anymore. They base their lives on pointless thinking, and they are in the dark in their reasoning. They are disconnected from God's life because of their ignorance and their closed hearts. They are people who lack all sense of right and wrong, and who have turned themselves over to doing whatever feels good and to practicing every sort of corruption along with greed. But you didn't learn that sort of thing from Christ. Since you really listened to him and you really were taught how the truth is in Jesus, change the former way of life that was part of the person you once were, corrupted by deceitful desires. Instead, renew the thinking of your mind by the Spirit and clothe yourself with the new person created according to God's image in justice and true holiness.
Mm. Paul has gone from preaching into meddling, as my grandfather used to say.
Right. Like I can hear this in a certain, like that'll like I can
Yeah.
in a pulpit with a little
The,
bit of fist bumping,
yeah,
just a little.
exactly. One of the very best sermons, like every once in a while, a sermon sticks with you and you remember it. One of the sermons Jeremy and I talk about was one that we heard on this 23 and 24, which was renew the thinking of your mind.
Mm.
And he kept going, renew the thinking of your mind. And then he would go like this. And like through the whole sermon, like he would do this. And so like every once in a while, Jeremy and I look at each other and go, and
Like you're flipping the switch.
like you're flipping the switch, you're renewing the mind. So what do we hear in this passage?
Ah, um, well, there's a pretty harsh criticism of Gentiles.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess Paul is basically like, there's no more. I guess I hear the pastoral argument. You don't have an excuse anymore. You don't
Mm.
have an excuse any longer to live in any way other than the way of Christ because you have experienced it, because you have learned about it. You don't get to claim ignorance any longer.
Yeah. It's a little bit like the 1 foot in, 1 foot out rule. Like
Yeah.
I have had people in the past who have attended church. They've come to church. They've been an active participant in worship. They've come to Sunday school, all this stuff. And they don't want to join the church because
Mhm.
in their head, there is a commitment afterwards to be a different person.
Right. Right.
Like I'm not ready to straighten up my life, quote unquote, in their minds
Right.
and become like the perfect like person, Christian thing, which
Right.
I try to actively like convince them that you don't have to be perfect to be a Christian. But there is a picture in their minds, in some people's minds, I think, that once you've committed yourself to that, like once you've joined a church, once you've committed to following Jesus, you have to live a better life.
Right.
And I mean, that's sort of where this is coming from. Like that's
Right.
sort of what Paul's arguing here.
Right. 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 Is that there is, and yeah.
I like the phrase
Yeah.
they base their lives on pointless thinking.
Right. Right. Right.
Interesting. So it's a really dig at Greek philosophy, is what that is.
Right. Right. Interesting.
So
Yeah.
do you know anything about the major streams of Greek philosophy at the time?
Gosh, you know what? I studied it in college, but I don't want to pretend that I remember much of anything to be educated on speaking to it at this point in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of nuance. There's more nuance than what I'm about to say, but
Right.
essentially, there was two major streams of Greek philosophy. And the first one was this sort of hedonistic lifestyle, that you should live
Mm,
life to the fullest, that you should experience all the pleasures that life can offer you, that there's the greatest good that you can seek is ultimate happiness and ultimate,
mhm,
often done through ultimate pleasure. And so there were cults to some gods that were basically the gods of partying. Like Bacchus is the god
I was gonna say
of
Dionysus is
yeah,
from yeah, Bacchus.
yeah.
Yep.
Bacchus is the Roman god.
Right.
Dionysus is the Greek
Dionysus
god.
is
They're
the
the
Greek.
same gods.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That much I
So
can remember. I can remember the all yeah,
yeah,
but yeah. Yep.
yeah. So Dionysus is also the god of theater. So theater
Right.
and drinking and partying
Revelry.
and licentiousness was all
Right.
wrapped together. So there was sort of that thread, and then there was the Stoic thread, which was the
Mhm.
opposite essentially of like deny yourself all pleasure, um, be don't have any emotions, have
Right.
a be sort of a flat kind of like reserved, inwardly controlled person.
Right.
Stoicism is making a bit of a comeback
Mm.
nowadays, especially in the manosphere, um,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. Of like this,
Yeah.
there's a YouTube channel called The Daily Stoic, and he's got like I don't know, it's like
Huh.
15 million followers or something like that. It's like a huge comeback now. So, but basically, those are the two streams of Greek
Okay.
philosophy at the time, and so Paul is basically saying that both of those streams are pointless, are useless. They're not helpful.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess when you go all in, if you extreme anything, it
Yeah.
becomes rather pointless. So, okay, Paul, I can get behind that, I suppose, in a particular way.
Well, and I really think, I mean, his
Mm.
harshest criticism is clearly for the people who are um, on the hedonism side of things, because he does
Right.
say, they've turned themselves over to whatever feels good.
Right, right. And they are in the dark in their reasoning. So I guess
Yeah.
he's saying like there's no like your reasoning is not connected to anything that makes sense or has a point to it.
Well, or is there reasoning at all? Like if you're totally given over
Right.
to your pleasure and
That's
impulse,
you're not being rational.
yeah.
Mm.
So it's sort of an excuse. I almost feel like anything that's based off of like whatever you feel is good,
Right.
and you should just indulge your feelings or your desires or whatever. I think there's a trap there because
Right.
uh, what feels good in the moment is often not the good choice for the long term.
Right. Right.
Right?
And it doesn't take into account any communal aspect. Like it doesn't take into account our herd mentality or our communalness that
Sure.
humanity was meant to live in community with one another. It's a very individualistic
Yeah.
mind frame.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm.
And so it's sort of like this deep criticism of, and I think
Yeah.
the resurgence of Stoicism is also in our current age is a little bit of a critique of that mindset too. But I wonder if
Mhm.
a lot of how we could define the last, gosh, 10 years probably of American culture
Mhm.
is in this YOLO mindset.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 And I wonder too, to thinking about the return in the manosphere kind of sense of the stoicism and whatnot, that the expansion we have made on our understanding of how and who we love and what life looks like for different people doesn't feel like the argument behind it would be, oh well, this is like a hedonistic, you're just giving in to pleasures and desires. This is not actually who you are. This is just you acting out on some kind of selfish desire that you have, or something along this. Like I can see that argument being created to to try to get back to that kind of stoic, more traditional side of things. So yeah, it makes sense.
Well, yeah, and I think there is a well, my mother always taught me like Presbyterians preach the doctrine of moderation, all things in moderation. Like all
Right.
things are good, in moderation.
Right.
Um, and so I think there's a danger on both sides of like,
Yeah.
I don't know that it's possible to be 100% in control of your emotions all the time and totally
Right.
rational in all your decision making and like living every moment with like thoughtful purpose. I don't know that that's
Right.
realistic as far
Right.
as like how humans actually function.
Right.
But
Otherwise, like there's a lot of suppression going on if you're really there. Like there's got to be a lot of suppression taking place. So,
yeah, and feelings in and of themselves aren't bad. And I think
right.
sometimes
Right.
I always want to be careful that we don't in the design in the conversation of like you should have some control over your responses in
Right.
things that we're careful to say like it's not wrong to feel things.
Right. Right. It's how you, what you do with those feelings and the steps that you take and the actions that you take that that are the things that you need to do with intention. The feelings are just a reality of what's happening in the moment. Right. Yeah.
Well, I think some of that for me is to remove the shame of it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
uh there's a lot of responses we have. There's a lot of times where people make bad choices out of a trauma response or out of um peer pressure, whatever. Like there's lots of
Right.
reasons people make bad choices. And I don't think shame should come along with that
Right.
because who among us has not made bad
Right.
choices, right? But
Right.
I think what Paul is here is cautioning against is the turning yourself over to what feels good. So like
Right.
the only thing that matters is the impulse of the moment. And I don't
Right.
know that I've ever made a choice in the impulse of the moment that turned out to be long term good.
Healthy and good. Right. Right. And again, it also does not take into account the fact that you are part of a bigger community and part of
Yeah.
a society and part of because I also find that if you're mm, that's going to be a generalization, but I'm going to go with the generalization and just recognize that that's what it is. You know, quite often, if you are giving in to your desires or your pleasures or whatever they are, is it at the expense of someone else?
Mhm.
Quite possibly, yes. You know, quite. I mean, not necessarily all the time. Again, that's not a. But I think that is something that I would caution people on. Like,
And
you
I
know,
wonder if that's what he means by you learn differently in Christ.
right,
It's not
right,
like Christ was walking around never enjoying himself.
right,
I think we
right,
sometimes have this image of like, I don't know, like a Jesus that's not fully human in any way. Like it's
right.
some sort
He's
of
purity culture
cipher.
Jesus. Right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah.
I would
Um,
like to believe that Jesus danced at every wedding he attended and drank some of that wine that he made. You know, like, come on.
I got in so much trouble once. Oh my God. But I don't, it's not very often somebody gets angry with me after a sermon, like that I have to, like, people will come up to me and be like, well, I don't know that I agree with that. Or they'll
Right,
have a critique of it, or they'll have a different opinion on it. And that's totally fine. I welcome all of
right,
that. I'm happy for that. Or, um, why didn't you talk about this? Like all of that's great because
right,
often it gives me another thing to reflect on the next time I talk about that topic. I need to
right.
make sure I think about this. So I love that. But like every once in a while, somebody has come up to me like angry
Yeah.
about something that I preached. And the one time that I got in a lot of trouble with somebody was I said that Jesus drank with his friends.
Mm,
No, I said, I'm sorry, Jesus got drunk with his friends. That's what they had a problem with. It wasn't that he had was drinking alcohol. It was the idea of losing control to the alcohol.
uh,
And I thought that was an interesting nuance. And I still
huh.
don't know I don't know that I see a difference, but
Right,
maybe there is a
right.
difference and I just didn't see it. But um,
That person has been touched by alcoholism, I would imagine, maybe.
I would imagine, yeah, there was a deeper story there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
And unfortunately they stopped engaging. Like I
Oh,
didn't,
yeah.
I wasn't in a place to like it was like not a place to
Right.
have a good conversation. And they just sort of like detached and stopped like
Oh,
wanting to engage in the conversation. So I never got down to the deep roots of it.
right,
But
right.
I
Hmm.
do think we have to realize that um, corruption, the issue with corruption is not the damage it does with the individual, but corruption
Right,
and greed of all sorts have a very real impact on the community around us.
right. It permeates outward.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
And I'm wondering if like less like the scolding, you're a bad person is what Jesus communicated, but more like remembering the impact that you have on the other people around you. Like, is that what Paul, do you think
Right.
that's what Paul is trying to point out here?
I would like to believe that 'cause I was you didn't learn that sort of thing from Christ. You didn't learn how to be self-centered in
Hmm.
Christ. In fact, you learned the opposite. And so this whole concept of renew the thinking in your mind by the Spirit. Well, the Spirit in my mind was the thing that connected everyone. In that original story, the Spirit had a huge part in connecting folks. So yeah, if to me it's um the alternative to all of these things that this deceit and this corruption is a consistent and constant awareness that you are just one of many, um, and
Yeah, and
that
I love
living
this image, clothing yourself with a new person created according to God. That's a
Mhm.
baptismal reference.
Right, right.
So in the early church, people would be brought into the chamber, the baptismal room. It was always Easter evening or early Easter
Mm.
morning. They were brought into the baptismal room, and they would be wearing one set of clothing. And then in the room, they would take all their clothing off and they would be baptized naked. And then they would be
Huh.
clothed, literally clothed with a new robe,
Wow.
symbolizing the new person. And that's why there
Yeah.
were deaconesses in the early church. So there were deacons and deaconesses because they recognized the women were the ones who
Right.
needed to, um, which clearly meant that there were also female people who were baptizing, were doing
Uh-huh.
the baptizing, because if they
Right.
recognized that there needed to be that
Right.
um,
Right.
gendered
Right.
experience for baptism, if you're going to be doing it with no clothes on, oh,
Right. Right. Right.
um,
Then women were given some authority, I would
then
imagine,
women,
right?
yeah, yeah. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
so I love that baptismal
Yeah.
um, idea. And so, what's the implication, do you think, here that Paul is saying about our deceitful desires if after we're baptized?
Hmm. I mean, it's interesting because I wonder about, let's see. He says, change the former way of life that was the part of the person you once were corrupted by deceitful desires. Instead, renew the thinking of your mind. I don't know. I'm trying to decide if this is it that assumption that the deceitful desires will go away
Mm.
in your baptism, or is it saying that you will no longer allow that to corrupt your thinking further?
Well, it seems fairly clear that it, the deceitful desires had not gone away in these people, because there's no reason to
Right,
give this advice or this
right,
command if everybody in the Ephesian church was cleansed from all
right,
deceitful desires by their baptism.
right,
So I
right.
think there's some recognition that it's not like, there's my robot kicking on. I told you um, that it's not like some sort of magic where like all of a sudden
Right,
you don't even feel
right.
any kind of. I'm also a little perplexed, like wondering a little bit at the difference between desire and deceitful desire.
Hmm. That's a good point.
Because I don't think all desire is bad
Right, right,
or inherently corruptible, like
right,
or corrupting. I guess like I don't think it's necessarily bad to have a desire for chocolate
right.
every once in a while. So where does it step over the line from
Hmm.
just being a desire we experience to it being something that is capable of corrupting us?
So I wonder, and I don't know, this is just maybe this is too modern of a way of thinking, but we talk about when you're talking to folks about anxiety or mental health struggles and the kind of litmus test around when you seek higher levels of help or whatnot. It's, when this thing interrupts your ability to function on a daily basis. And so I think about like when a desire interrupts your ability to make a good decision for yourself or for other people, then
Mm-hmm.
does it become deceitful? If that desire is going to create something unsafe or unhealthy for yourself or another person, is that kind of the threshold at which you can say this is no longer desire, like this is something that you should not and cannot act upon? I don't know.
Yeah. I love that. I really like that. And it makes me wonder about the difference between, I think I link somewhat in my head desire and temptation as being the same
Hmm.
and not the same thing, at least friends, at least really close together. Like,
Right, right.
and I wonder about the difference between desiring something and being tempted by
Hmm.
it.
Huh.
And
Yeah.
is there a, am I seeking nuance where maybe there isn't nuance? Are these
Right, right,
interchangeable words? But I wonder, because I guess temptation for me, like we pray, lead me not into temptation every
right.
Sunday. But is that the same thing as like mute all desires in me? And I'm not sure that's the,
So
I'm
I
wondering
don't
if
know
there's a
why.
difference.
And I think maybe, I don't know why I think this. And so I don't, again, maybe there's like a wrong nuance or something, but for some reason, desire feels internal and temptation feels external. Like desire feels like it's coming from within and temptation feels like it's coming from outside. Um, I'd have to sit and think on why that would matter in like a negative spin or a positive spin. I don't know that I could articulate whether or not that matters. I don't know.
Like I
Hmm.
said, there may not be as much of a
Right, 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 right.
nuance difference as I'm creating in my head. Except for I do think the external internal thing maybe has some input into it. And I guess temptation, there is that link with sin in my brain with
Right, right.
temptations. But then Paul here is saying deceitful desire, and that makes me wonder if they're closer linked than what I think they are. Like if we have a feeling or an
Yeah,
emotion or an experience or something that rises up within us that
yeah.
is a powerful something that might draw us in, is it when the temptation to act on it becomes the driver that it becomes sinful? You
Mm,
see what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's some times where like I really want, and I keep going back to chocolate because that's what I'm craving right now. But like I really want a chocolate. I want some chocolate milkshake.
Right,
And that's a desire that I have. But
right,
unless I'm driving by cookout, I'm not getting that. I can't act on that temptation. And so
right.
is it the acting on it that's the issue, or is it the feeling
Mm.
of it that's the issue?
I mean, my gut says it's the acting on it because then we go back to the feelings. I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of like when John talks about behavior modifications in kind of the prison system and whatnot, and like training officers when you've got an inmate who is irate and is yelling every single possible thing about your mother and your grandmother and all of this and that and the other. But the goal from the beginning was to get that inmate to move back to their room or their cell.
Hmm.
If their feet are moving, it doesn't matter what they're saying to you. The behavior has been modified. You're getting the result that you were seeking. And so, wait, I just completely lost why I was going to connect that to the acting on. Oh, so like our, it does feel like it's almost impossible for us to tamp down all of the desires or wants or even, I, if I am being incredibly honest, I have a temper when it comes to driving in the car. For whatever reason, my angst and whatever frustrations I have held in the day are going to be projected onto the drivers around me. And I feel like people are doing things to me on purpose in their cars,
Right.
like you are driving in the spot that I don't like you to drive next to me. Like I don't like being side by side in a car, but you're doing that to me on purpose. Do I not have the desire to like yank my car over and bump them off the road? I might have that desire. If I'm being wildly honest, I don't want to harm anyone, but
Hmm.
that's what bubbles up from in my sinful self. I don't see that as the problem would be when I allowed that to become so visceral and so real that I acted upon it and
Yeah.
harm to another human being in the world, because then I would be living exactly the opposite of what Christ has invited me to do.
I think that's helpful. It's the giving over of
Yeah,
yourself. Like, I think
yeah,
going back to verse 18, it's not the impulse or the
right,
desire in and of itself. It's the giving yourself over to it without any kind of guiding principles or
right,
framework or thought to the impact on other
right.
people in the moment. And maybe, I mean,
And
Paul
I
does
think,
say at points that it's if you feel anger, don't let the
mhm,
sun go down in your anger. It's not like
right,
anger in and of itself is not bad. It's the sinful ways that we act upon it that causes
right,
us
right.
harm.
Uh-oh. I just lost you again. Is that me? Oh, there you are. Yay,
Hi.
we're back. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that it's so yeah, there is, if you want to say, we are what? We are theoretically just, we're sinful creatures by nature. And maybe that's where that shame part comes in,
Mm,
is when I could, and I have in the past, like I have felt shame over a feeling that I have had. I have felt shame over wanting to bump that person off the road because they're annoying me. Um, Rather than recognizing that that feeling was going to come no matter what, because I am a human being and the
mhm.
humanness in me has that sinfulness within me. And my job and responsibility is to not act upon
Yeah.
that sinful nature that seems to bubble up within me, to be aware of and intentional. And that's renewing my mind and clothing myself in Christ,
Yeah.
because I can't be Jesus, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that letting myself off the hook a little too easy? I don't know.
No, I keep thinking one of the important theological pieces for me that has developed over time is this idea that sin is not the behavior.
Mm,
Sin is not the specific thing that we do. Sin is the thing
right,
that is in our heart that causes us to want to do the thing.
right,
So sin is the part of me that's always wanting to only eat chocolate milkshakes for the rest of my life.
right,
Um,
right, right.
and so we all of us have that voice within us. I think all the time that
Hmm.
is tended towards doing, and I think it maybe expresses differently for all of us because we all have different
Right.
things that are broken within us. But
Yeah.
uh, it's not it's not a sin. The act is not the sin. The
Right.
the living out of the thing is not. I mean, it's not a good thing to do. Definitely shouldn't
Right.
do it. It's
Right.
corruptible. Every time that you act on your sin, it gets a little bit easier to do it.
Right.
Every time,
Right.
which is the corruptible part. Like every time that
Right.
I drive through on the way home from work, it's easier
Yeah.
the next day
Yeah.
to go and do that. And
Right.
so there is a recognition that acting on the sin is makes it easier every single time, and that's how we give
Mhm.
ourselves over to it. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I think that's maybe the where the line is in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, verse 25. Therefore, after you've gotten rid of lying, each of us must tell the truth to your neighbor because we are parts of each other in the same body. Be angry without sinning. Don't let the sun set on your anger.
Mm.
Don't provide an opportunity for the devil. Thieves should no longer steal. Instead, they should go to work, using their hands to do good so that they will have something to share with whoever is in need. Don't let any foul words come out of your mouth. Only say what is helpful when it is needed for building up the community so that it benefits those who hear what you say. Don't make the Holy Spirit of God unhappy. You are sealed by him for the day of redemption. Put aside bitterness, losing your temper, anger, shouting, and slander, along with every other evil. Be kind, compassionate, and forgiving to each other in the same way God forgave you in Christ. That sort of contradicts everything we just said.
All right, right,
Oh, Paul.
right. Although he did say
Confound you.
be angry without sinning. I mean,
Yeah.
oh yeah, there's a I don't know. There's something in it to me that, and again, I always worry that I'm either coming down too hard or I'm letting myself off the hook too easy. Like I feel like there's no in between there. But you know, this is an ideal. This
Yeah.
is the goal. This is the goal that Paul is setting up for us as human beings. And the recognition I think that I have is that I will never get there. But the job is maybe not to get there. The job is to consistently pay attention to how I'm trying to
Mm.
get there. That each, and again, like I said, maybe I'm letting myself off too easy, but don't let foul words come out of your mouth. Well, guess what? Failed at that even today. But did
Well,
I
I want to say,
recognize in that moment, like,
right.
did I recognize that I did something wrong and maybe take note of the fact that I could have done that differently? Yes, I did.
I think it's helpful to recognize the alternative he presents with each thing. So, like,
Mm,
don't let any foul words come out of your mouth. Only say what is helpful when is needed for building up the community. So it's not
right,
curse words.
right.
Like foul words and curse words are not equal. They're not the same.
That's true.
For
That's
one
true.
thing, those have changed over time. What we
Right,
consider to be
right,
a dirty word or a bad word
right,
changes over. That's culturally contextual.
right. Very true.
Some of the curse words we have nowadays, they didn't even exist 200 years ago.
Right,
Like if you trace back their origins. So, and they're different in every language. Like
right.
or even not even different languages, but like different cultures. What are curse
Yeah.
words in America? If you go to England, they use all the time.
Right,
Um,
right,
and we use words that they would consider to be dirty words all the time because it's
right,
not the same
right,
culture. So
right.
I think we should be careful to say like those
That's
kinds of
very true.
things
That's very
are
true.
culturally contextual.
Right,
However, it does remind us that what we need to recognize that our voice has weight in our community, and we should be careful about how we use it.
right. So the foul words are those that tear down. And what
Yeah.
he's saying is use your voice for building up, not for tearing down. And here we come back to the community piece.
Yes, this whole thing is about community.
Yeah,
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 everything he names here is about the impact that it has on the community.
yeah,
Don't lie because you are responsible for your neighbor and you're part of the
right,
same body. It's
right,
not just don't lie because it's objectively bad to lie.
right,
It's always contextual.
right,
It's always linked to this responsibility for your people in your fellow community.
right. I'm trying to figure out. It's really interesting to me. And here goes the color on my computer again. I'm changing color as we speak, friends. In my particular translation, each of you must tell the truth to your neighbor is italicized.
Mm-hmm.
Be angry without sinning is italicized. And I'm not quite sure why, but in that whole passage, those two lines are in italics, and it makes me curious as to why.
It looks
Of
like
course.
those are my Bible has footnotes with those, and they look like those are quotes from the Old Testament.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
I don't know what they're
It's
quoting,
like,
and I couldn't tell you what their context is in the Old Testament. Like one's from Zechariah and one's from the Psalms, according
oh,
to my
there we go.
the
Okay,
footnotes.
now I was like, there's no footnotes. I found it now.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but clearly, I think that's interesting when there's a quote, direct quote
Right.
from,
Right.
because Paul is rooting it again in the Old
Uh-huh.
Testament.
Right.
Paul is harsher to the Old Testament than Jesus is, but Paul is still very rooted. There's still quite a
Mm,
lot of Paul's theology that is tied into the Old Testament, which is why we have it in our Bibles, because it's the foundation of this
right.
whole enterprise.
Right. Right.
I
Hmm.
love this commandment. The only one that doesn't have a counteraction to it is thieves should no longer steal. Instead, they should go to work.
Which I feel like has been taken out of context and used inappropriately for generations now, right? Like, why can't you
Ooh,
just get
yeah.
a job? It's like,
Which doesn't necessarily make you a thief, but yeah, I get that. Yeah.
right.
Some of that's the American myth, right? Like, because we're all
Mhm.
taught in elementary
Yes.
school about um, John Smith and John Rolfe and like how John Smith was the first guy and everybody died because he didn't make everybody work. And then the second guy came in and put everybody to work and then they were fine and they lived, which ignores
Right.
completely
A
the
lot of things.
the
Yeah.
historical reality of what happened in the colony. But
Yeah.
because there's some people who can't work. So I don't know that work
Right. Right.
in and of itself is like is holy or salvific. But yeah, thieves should no longer steal. Stop doing that.
Right. Hmm.
But the reasoning is interesting. So they will have something to share with whoever is in need.
Whoever's in need. Right. Back to
So
community.
it's back to community. It's not just go to work for work's sake, but do work, go and get
Right.
paid and make money so that you have something to give
Right.
when it's
So that,
time to give.
right. Mm. So it really does set it up and it makes sense. And I can get behind all of this with Paul from the standpoint of like the first part, um, I keep going back to like the deceitful desires and the problems with either strict hedonism or strict stoicism is the individualistic nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that what it does is it drives you to focus only on number one rather than recognizing that you are a part of a broader community and that
Yeah.
everyone matters within that community.
But I think the key controlling verse here is 31. Put aside bitterness, losing your temper, anger, shouting, and
Mm,
slander, along with every other evil, and be kind, compassionate, and forgiving to each other.
yeah,
I think it's Paul's way of saying, like,
yeah,
if you give yourself over to your deceitful corruption,
right,
your sinful desires, to temptation, what ends up happening is this bitterness and
yeah,
anger. And it's not like you just enjoy it. Like over time,
right,
it's like when you talk to an alcoholic or somebody who's had a history of drug abuse or
mhm,
um, a gambling addiction. If like you sit and you talk to them about it, what they talk about is not necessarily like the physical impact that those things had on
mhm,
them. Like it's always the way that they didn't like who they were becoming as a person that drives them to
right,
change. You
right,
know, um,
right,
I was becoming angry. I was isolated. I was like the reasons people decide to stop doing those things is not because they couldn't afford it, because people will always find money. And it's not because
hmm,
they didn't enjoy how it felt anymore. And it wasn't
right,
because um, of anything other than like the impact they knew it was having on other people
mhm,
and the changes they saw in themselves and their own attitudes and their
right.
own perception of the world.
Isn't that interesting too? You know, you were saying it was making me angry. I feel like the root to me, the root sin is the anger with which, I mean, Paul pulls out anger as a separate, it's not in the list. I mean, it's in the list of things, but like losing your temper, anger, but he pulls it out and talks specifically about anger first. And then we
Mm-hmm.
talk about the list of things. And I'm thinking about like my own sinful heart and not in the car. The more I allow myself to be angry, the more I allow myself to presume that everybody around me is doing stuff to me, which is an incredibly selfish thought process, by the way, the more I allow the anger to drive my decision making. Like anger driving the decision making. It's like anger is at the root of a lot of our sinful behaviors, deceitful behaviors.
What is the because what is the root of bitterness and anger and slander really?
Mm,
It's it's externalizing
yeah,
our feelings onto other people,
yeah,
right? So we have my guess is the anger you experience in the car is rooted in your the fear of the impact other people can have on your
right,
car. Like
right,
if you were just driving by yourself on the road,
right. That'd be
there's
great.
never any anger. It's the anger we get from driving is when somebody else does something stupid that endangers
Right,
us. And so
right.
anger is really a response to fear and
And
a
I can't
response to our
control that.
vulnerability. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
a loss of
Uh-huh.
control. And so, like all of those things that he talks about bitterness and losing your temper and anger and shouting and slander are all ways that we separate ourselves from other people and
Right.
create a barrier between ourselves and others.
Yep.
And when we allow that to consume us, it prevents us from being able to being in relationship with one another.
Yep.
I don't know if you know anybody who's super bitter
Yeah.
about the way
Yeah.
life has treated them, but it feels like when you talk to somebody who's consumed by their bitterness or their anger, everything is somebody else. It's everything is
Yeah.
external to them.
Yeah.
There's nothing, they never take ownership of their
Absolutely.
part of
Hmm.
whatever thing. Um, and
Yeah.
and I think that's really what, like, this, the root of that, of those five things that he lists there, is that when you let those things have control, they separate you from, they create a dividing barrier between you and other people and prevent you
Right.
being able to do the work of recognizing your responsibility for the circumstances in your life.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the sin there in a way, isn't it? It's yeah.
Yeah, because sin, I mean, we talked about sin a lot today, but like sin is in and of itself is selfishness, it's self-centeredness, it's
Right.
that
Right.
inward lookingness that when we put ourselves firstness. Um,
Exactly.
and so anything that's a product of that
Yeah.
is going to lead us into that path of evil. Because look
Yeah.
at the opposites, like in 32, what is he saying that the things that he's saying are good?
Where did I just lost my place? Right. Kindness, compassion, forgiveness. Hmm.
And all of those are the opposite because
Yep.
they're all um, taking the needs and realities of the other person into account
Right.
first.
Yep.
Like, what does compassion look like?
Right. It looks like putting someone else, offering something of yourself to someone else, right? It's
Yeah, and
yeah.
kindness and forgiveness both require you to take a beat and see the other person
Yes. Yep.
as a whole and as a child of God, just like you. And
Hmm.
so it's also external in a lot of ways, but it's external in a way that invites people in.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. So yeah, there's a real nice juxtaposition being created in this passage. The old my translation titles this section the old and new life.
Hmm.
And the old life is the me first, self-centered, living off of um, that um, the corruption of individual of over individualism, perhaps. And the new life is recognizing how very connected you are to everyone else around you and how responsible you are in that space. Hmm.
And how those are the things that give you long-term pleasure and
Right,
satisfaction
right. And
are
those are the
are
things that God
yeah.
modeled for you in Jesus. And those are the things God asks of you now. And you don't have any excuse left in not doing them because you literally got to see how it's done.
Well, I think that's important because as a reminder, it's like Jesus was angry and Jesus did
Yeah,
shout at times,
yeah,
but the motivation behind it was always for on behalf of
yeah,
the vulnerable or the weaker in that situation. And so it was always done from a, it was like a compassionate anger.
right,
It wasn't a selfish anger. It was
right,
um, anger on behalf of
right.
the folks who needed him to speak up in those situations. And so it was driven from compassion and kindness and not from selfishness.
Well, and it's kind of like like we go back to the very beginning of talking about, our feelings are our feelings. You don't help those. What you do is discern what it is that you're going to do with them. Well, Jesus's anger was a righteous anger, and what he did with it was put it into action in ways that taught and led. The Pharisees and all of the leadership, their anger was an anger that grew out of fear. And what did they do with that? They squashed whatever didn't match their thinking. So their actions, same feeling, very different actions coming out of those feelings, right? Um, so yeah,
Yeah. So it's just a constant reminder that it's not not the impulse or
Right.
the initial thing. It's that beat. Do we take the beat
Yep.
to remember
Yeah.
who we are and whose we are in this
Right.
situation?
Right.
And the next time somebody cuts you off in the car, do you take the beat
Right.
to experience the fear and anger without acting on it?
Right.
And maybe not. Like, I don't know that I don't know that I'm mature enough to do that. But I'm just saying. Like,
I had a counselor once who gave me really good advice, and I try to do it. I try to remember to do it. Like, what's your mantra? What's the saying that I say? I have found myself saying so much in the last 5 years of my life, probably because I'm finally getting older and wiser. It's not about me. It's not about me. Like, that's become one of my mantras of just, and sometimes I have to say it out loud because that is that beat of refocus that, you know what, that person's driving is not about me. It's really not. And then I get a chance to laugh at myself and realize how ridiculous that kind of sinful impulse to assume something. And then you get to move on. But yeah.
it's just funny to me. This is the third conversation I've had with somebody today admitting their anger in the car. I just
A
wonder how many of us have
bit
this
of a
secret problem.
bit of an epidemic, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. What's your takeaway today?
Oh, Paul. I really do love that. Like, I think part of my takeaway is I have I've spent a lot of my adult life listening to other people talk about how they didn't like Paul because of his like aggressiveness or abruptness or whatever it was. And I'm now like just now starting to realize, well, maybe it's because you were taking it at some kind of face value and you were hearing it from some place that you were in. You weren't hearing what Paul was saying. And so I have a new appreciation for Paul's words when you sit with them for a bit. um and I think my other takeaway is you cannot live a faithful Christ-like life without automatically recognizing how you are a part of something bigger than yourself. You can't do it.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a solitary Christian existence.
Right, right,
Um, even the monks who locked themselves in their cells for years had to come out and get food. People had to
right,
feed them. They were still dependent upon other people. So
right,
um, there is no Christian existence that doesn't require you to participate in some form of community.
right.
I think that's really important. Yeah, the person who changed my mind about Paul is a professor at Union Seminary in Richmond, Frances Taylor Ginch, and she wrote a
Ah,
book
yes.
called oh gosh, I'm not gonna remember the name of it now. Text of Terror, and
Mm,
it's the words of Paul that were used as bludgeons for centuries to justify terrible things like
mm,
slavery or oppression of women or like any number of things. And the beginning of the book, she talks about how the Bible, everything in the Bible is good for instruction, and we have to take it seriously. But you sometimes have to do some work to unpack it. You can't
mm-hmm.
just take it at face value. You really do have to do
Right,
the hard work underneath of, well, what does this really mean in a human context? And like, what's the
right,
actual situation that it's addressing? And
right.
what does it mean in real life? Um, so yeah, that's every time I read Paul, I'm always like, okay, I gotta do a little bit more work. I can't just
Yeah, yeah,
take this at face value. Um, so I think that both of those things are always important for me to remember. The thing for me to take away um, is the beat.
mm,
I've had to work really hard in my life to develop that pause between what is happening in my head and what comes out of my mouth.
mm, yeah,
Because I'm not going to say it was always kind or good or wonderful. Like often things came out of my mouth that were hurtful and angry and not good. And I could see the impact it had on other people over time. And
mm,
so these words of Paul are always a reminder to me that the work that I always have to do is that pause between the impulsive thing that wants to come out of my mouth and the
Right.
And over time, it's become less of a gap. Like I don't have to, I don't have to pause as often.
Right.
But I do. It is still always going to be a growing edge for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and how important it is to do the work, especially in
Yeah.
a position of leadership and authority.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
that's Ephesians 4. This is appreciate what's pleasurable was this week's.
Ah,
Yeah. And I usually tell you
told
what
you
the theme is
meaning of pleasure.
beforehand.
Right.
um,
Interesting.
but, I think that's just wanted to see. No, I'm sorry. I lied. Commendable. Appreciate what
Commendable.
is
Okay.
commendable. And so, what are the good things we notice in each other? Um,
Yeah.
do we notice what other people are doing that is good? And
Hmm.
so, um, next week we got a guest on our podcast. So Miss Catherine will not be around next week.
I will not be here.
She's gonna listen with open ears to see what
I absolutely
our
will.
friend Colin has to say.
Hey,
So
I'm
next
ready to
week
learn.
yeah. He's been in seminary much more recently than me, so I'm hoping he has some.
He's got
hoping to
some
give
new
the reins
insights,
of.
okay. There we go.
You tell me what Hebrews is about. No pressure, right?
Yep.
So next week we're looking at Hebrews chapter 13, the last part of that chapter, which is the very end of the book of Hebrews, which is an interesting book in and of itself. And so next week we're going to be looking at. Next week is pleasure. Next week we're going to be looking at what is pleasurable. So what is pleasing.
I will look forward to that. I will look forward to listening. Yay.
Thanks, Catherine. Have fun on vacation.
You too.
Bye.
These podcasts will always be free. However, if you find them meaningful and would like to consider supporting our online outreach, you can donate using the link in the description or at wakeforestpres.org.